Jared Whitman had dedicated years to overseeing his restaurant chain from a relaxed vantage point, focusing on the figures, sanctioning policies, and placing his confidence in district managers to manage the daily operations. Yet recently, an unsettling feeling lingered. The reports gleamed with precision, the figures remained steady, but a growing tide of customer complaints regarding sluggish service and overwhelmed staff was accumulating. He inherited the chain from his father, who had constructed it from the ground up, and he expanded it to 12 locations. Yet, at some point, he had drifted away from the true essence of his own enterprise. The decisive moment arrived when he caught wind of a discussion between two executives in his corporate office. "They're perpetually short-staffed," one of them mentioned, yet the manager insists it's merely a matter of employees not wanting to work. "I'm not sure I believe that." That was sufficient for Jared. He chose to immerse himself in the role of a novice trainee at one of his most bustling locations, situated just outside of Chicago. He had never met the employees there face to face, and with a fresh haircut, an inexpensive uniform, and a new last name, Jared Walker, he would go unrecognized. As he entered, the atmosphere was thick with unease. The kitchen buzzed with chaos, the dining area felt the strain of being understaffed, and the workers navigated their tasks as if submerged in an overwhelming tide of responsibilities. Though the clock had barely struck noon, the weariness etched on their faces revealed that this was far from an isolated incident. A weary voice drew him back from his musings. "You're the newcomer." Jared glanced over to spot a woman in her late 20s, her dark brown hair gathered haphazardly into a ponytail. Her uniform appeared neat, yet somewhat worn, and dark shadows lingered beneath her eyes. "Sure, I'm Jared," he mentioned. "It's the first day." She offered him a faint, weary smile. "My name is Tessa. I'll guide you through, but just a heads up, we're quite busy, and you'll be diving right into the thick of it." Jared nodded, trailing behind her as she swiftly outlined the essentials. Yet as they toiled together, there was an undeniable quality about her that captured attention. She moved swiftly and effectively, and even in her tired state she maintained a warm demeanor towards both customers and colleagues. Even when a customer lashed out at her for a mistake she hadn't even made, she graciously apologized and resolved the issue without a hint of complaint. Jared noticed the tension reflected in her gaze, however. As she glanced at her phone during her break, a shadow crossed her face for a fleeting moment before she swiftly tucked it away. After an hour of waiting, Jared finally saw the manager, a man named Kevin, make his entrance. In his mid-40s, he sported an expensive watch and appeared far too at ease for someone managing a restaurant with a limited staff. "Tessa," he called out sharply from the other side of the counter. "Tables are ready and waiting for you, hurry up." She tensed but acquiesced, hastening back to her tasks. Jared squinted, his gaze intense. Kevin had scarcely set foot on the floor, yet he was already issuing commands with authority. As the hours unfolded, Jared began to discern a recurring theme. Kevin would retreat into his office for extended periods, emerging only to offer his critiques. The staff appeared to be stretched thin, with several managing various responsibilities simultaneously. The kitchen team was facing challenges, but there were no additional hands available to assist. Tessa was the anchor, holding everything together amidst the chaos. As the dinner rush approached, Tessa appeared to be operating on sheer willpower. Jared finally took a moment to pull her aside. "Hey, are you all right?" he inquired. She released a soft laugh, gently shaking her head. "I will manage just fine." It was simply a long day. Yet Jared perceived it at this moment. The fatigue extended beyond this particular shift. It went beyond the surface. At that moment, an opportunity for deeper understanding presented itself as Kevin finally emerged once more. "Tessa, your shift wrapped up an hour ago," he remarked, hardly sparing her a look. "What brings you to this place still?" She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "We're in a tight spot and I didn't want to abandon anyone in their time of need." Kevin let out a derisive laugh. "That doesn't concern me. Wrap up your work and head home." Jared anticipated a debate, yet she merely nodded and picked up her bag. There was an unsettling feeling in the air. Anyone in need of additional funds would certainly stay for the entirety of their shift. In that moment, Jared resolved to take action. He was determined to uncover the truth about Tessa and the reasons behind the relentless demands placed on the restaurant staff. Jared observed Tessa as she departed, catching the subtle drag in her steps. There was a discrepancy that couldn't be ignored. Kevin's dismissive attitude went unnoticed by the rest of the staff, who seemed to treat the situation as just another ordinary occurrence. Jared had observed enough enterprises to recognize when something was being subtly accepted. He faced the tumult of the restaurant once more. Orders were accumulating, patrons were experiencing extended waits for their meals, and the team was feeling the pressure. The kitchen team hardly had a moment to clean their workspaces before the next surge of orders arrived. Jared jumped in to assist at the grill, hustling to ensure everything was on track. An older cook beside him murmured, "You pick things up quickly. We could certainly benefit from more assistance like that." His tone carried a sense of resignation rather than praise. Jared seized the moment. "Are you all typically this brief?" The man, identified by his name tag as Reed Lewis, cast a quick glance before returning to the task of flipping a burger, without fail. Kevin claims he can't hire additional staff, yet he certainly doesn't reduce his own hours. Jared tucked that away for future reference. The establishment was undoubtedly thriving, evident in the constant flow of patrons, yet the staff appeared to be stretched thin and lacking adequate support. He had to uncover the depths of this situation. As the night wore on and his shift came to a close, he lingered outside the restaurant. If Tessa wasn't putting in extra hours, where could she have gone? He waited only a short while. She stood at the far end of the parking lot, propped against a weathered sedan, her fingers gently massaging her temples. After a brief pause, she retrieved her phone, lingered for a moment, then dialed a number. Jared kept his distance, yet he noticed the way her shoulders tightened. The dialogue was faltering. A moment later, she ended the call, releasing a sharp breath before sliding into her car. The following day, Jared showed up early, eager to witness more of the morning rituals. The back door of the restaurant stood slightly open, allowing the faint murmur of voices to drift out into the evening air. Kevin's voice cut through the air with precision. "Your rent situation is not my concern, Tessa. Your early departure yesterday was noted, and that won't be acceptable moving forward." Jared paused just outside, attuned to the sounds around him. "I lingered for an additional hour," Tessa responded, her tone steady yet taut. "You left when I asked you to," Kevin retorted. "If you desired the hours, it would have been wise to voice your needs." Silence lingered for a moment before her response came, softer this time. "I did it last week. You cut them regardless." Jared tightened his fists. Kevin's tone became condescending. "It's not my concern. If you want additional hours, show that you merit them." Jared was oblivious to Tessa's reply, only aware of the fading sound of her footsteps as she departed. When the door swung open for customers, she returned to her duties, behaving as though nothing had transpired. If Jared hadn't caught wind of it, he would have remained blissfully unaware of any issues at hand. At that moment, clarity dawned upon him. Kevin wielded power over her schedule, manipulating it to his advantage. Regardless of whether it stemmed from personal beliefs or his management style, it was simply intolerable. During the shift, Jared observed the workings of the establishment closely. It was evident that Kevin put forth only the least amount of effort. In moments of chaos, he chose not to intervene. Rather, he expressed disapproval. If anyone sought assistance, he would dismiss them. When errors occurred, accountability was immediate and transparent. In a moment of quiet, Jared found Tessa in the storage room, diligently organizing the supplies. "Hey," he remarked, maintaining a laid-back tone, "I noticed Kevin was being quite difficult with you earlier." She averted her gaze from him. "It's merely a task at hand. It certainly appears to be something," he insisted. "It appears that he is intentionally reducing your hours." Tessa let out a weary sigh as she placed the box on the ground. "That's just the way things are. He has his preferred choices. If you resist, you forfeit opportunities. So why not depart?" she pondered. With the urgency of rent looming and the reality that jobs aren't simply handed out, Jared nodded in comprehension. It transcended mere employment. It was a matter of existence. That evening brought the ultimate realization of just how dire the situation had become. Maria, a single mother working the evening shift, found herself grappling with the demands of her job while trying to stay connected by checking her phone between tasks. Kevin observed and turned it into quite the show. "You wish to message endlessly through the night, Maria. Perhaps I ought to reduce your hours as well." Maria's face turned red. "My sitter was meant to collect my daughter." Kevin gestured with a wave of his hand. "That's not something I need to concern myself with." That was the final breaking point. Jared had witnessed more than enough. This was not merely a case of mismanagement, it was a clear instance of exploitation. Kevin maintained control through fear, leaving the staff with no option but to comply. Jared refused to allow it to persist. Jared had witnessed more than enough. Kevin's management of schedules, his disregard for employees' challenges, and his reluctance to intervene when necessary, revealed a definitive truth. This was not merely a case of inadequate management. It was a conscious disregard that had persisted without oversight for far too long. As his shift drew to a close, he resolved firmly he would no longer be patient. Tonight, Kevin would realize precisely who he had been regarding as merely another, insignificant worker. Once the final customers had departed, Jared lingered, claiming he was there to assist with the cleanup. Tessa and Maria were wrapping up their tasks, weary yet maintaining their swift pace. Kevin, as always, had hardly made any effort. He lingered in the office, probably absorbed in his phone, as his team diligently handled the tasks he ought to have been supervising. Jared approached the office door, knocked lightly, and then gently pushed it open. Kevin hardly lifted his gaze. "Is there something you require?" Kevin inquired, his voice lacking any particular emotion. Jared entered the room, closing the door softly behind him. He removed his work cap, raking his fingers through his hair as he locked eyes with Kevin. "Indeed," Jared remarked, his tone steady yet resolute. "It's important for you to recognize exactly who you've been belittling over the last 2 days." Kevin scowled, evidently failing to identify him without the tacky uniform. Jared allowed the quiet to linger for a moment before he pressed on. "I am Jared Whitman, the proud owner of this entire chain." Kevin's expression remained largely unchanged at first, but gradually understanding dawned on him. His shoulders tensed, and he stood tall. "That's a good joke," Kevin remarked, though there was a subtle tremor in his voice. Jared retrieved. His phone tapped a few times and angled the screen toward himself. The company website came to life, showcasing his name and title prominently. Kevin's gaze darted between the screen and Jared's expression, his breath catching in his throat. Jared advanced a step. "For the past 2 days, I've observed you driving this establishment into ruin, observing you mistreat your team, dismiss their challenges, and behave as if their well-being is insignificant. Trust me when I say I've reached my limit on watching." Kevin's lips parted, yet silence lingered in the air, words eluding him for the moment. He let out a derisive laugh, reclining in his chair, as if attempting to reclaim a sense of authority. "Listen, I can't quite grasp your perspective on this, but—" Jared interrupted him. "I noticed that Tessa's hours were reduced, even though she puts in more effort than anyone else in this place. I witnessed you belittle Maria while she was simply trying to ensure her child's safety. I witnessed a whole restaurant in distress while you remained in this office, taking no action." Kevin's jaw clenched. It's difficult to convey the challenges of overseeing a place like this. At times, a firm hand is necessary for guiding employees effectively. Jared's gaze remained unwavering. That was not an example of effective guidance. "Your time here is over." And that was the final say. Kevin's complexion drained of color. "Hold on. It seems I'm being let go with immediate effect." Jared spoke calmly, yet the weight of his words made it clear that there was no space for disagreement. "Your severance will undergo evaluation, but manage your expectations accordingly. Gather your belongings. You'll never return." Kevin's hands clenched tightly on the desk, yet he chose not to press the matter any further. He must have come to the understanding that there was no escape from this situation. Jared moved on without waiting for an answer. He pivoted and exited the office, re-entering the main area where Tessa, Maria, and the other employees were wrapping up for the evening. The weariness etched on their faces was unmistakable, yet there was also a subtle acceptance, as if they had come to terms with the reality of their situation long ago. Jared cleared his throat, capturing their focus. "Kevin has departed," he declared. Stillness. Gradually the looks transformed from disbelief to a tentative sense of comfort. Maria stared in astonishment. Tessa let out a breath, massaging the back of her neck as she absorbed the weight of the words that had just reached her ears. Tessa inquired, "He's truly gone," Jared acknowledged with a nod. At this moment, Louis the cook emitted a soft whistle. "I never imagined I would witness such a moment." Jared ventured deeper into the room. Changes are on the horizon. Eliminate any bias. It's time to stop burdening the top performers while allowing the underachievers to coast by without contributing. Leadership should be present consistently, not just when it suits their needs. Tessa folded her arms, observing him intently. "How can we be certain this isn't merely empty words?" Jared locked eyes with her. "I was fully immersed, not merely an observer. I collaborated with you. I noticed the effort you put in, and the dedication you have to maintaining this place. Effective immediately, you are being elevated to the position of assistant manager." Her eyes grew large with surprise. "Excuse me?" Jared remarked that you've been performing the role all along, even without the official designation. It's time for you to receive the acknowledgement and compensation that you deserve. Tessa appeared truly taken aback. Maria chuckled softly, her head shaking in disbelief. Jared pressed on. "Wage hikes are on the horizon for everyone. We will carefully examine the schedules to ensure that everyone is receiving the hours they require. When we bring on a new general manager, it will be someone who genuinely backs this team." For the first time since entering this restaurant, Jared noticed a change in the genuine hope of the employees. Tessa rediscovered her voice at last. I'm at a loss for words." Jared offered a slight nod. "In that case, remain silent. Simply reveal the potential of this place when it's managed properly." As the employees gradually started to comprehend the unfolding events, Jared took a step back, absorbing the atmosphere around him. Rebuilding trust will require patience to demonstrate that this isn't merely a fleeting solution, yet tonight marks the beginning of that journey. Jared made his entrance early the following morning, slipping into the restaurant before it welcomed its first patrons. The atmosphere was distinctly subdued, filled with anticipation. Workers navigated their surroundings with a careful vigor, unsure of the extent of the transformations that had occurred in the span of a night. Tessa stood behind the counter, her fingers deftly navigating a clipboard brimming with scheduling notes and inventory sheets. Her gaze lifted at the sight of him, her face a mask of mystery. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon," she remarked, placing the clipboard aside. Jared rested his back against the counter. It felt wrong to offer assurances and then vanish without a trace. She observed him intently for a moment before giving a nod of understanding. "That seems reasonable." The remainder of the morning shift arrived gradually, their voices low and filled with quiet conversation. News of Kevin's departure had spread, yet uncertainty lingered about what would come next. Jared understood that mere words were insufficient. They required tangible evidence that change was on the horizon. He entered the center of the room, speaking to them with intent. "Last night was quite overwhelming, wasn't it? Having worked under someone like Kevin, I understand how challenging it can be to trust that genuine transformation is on the horizon. However, it is indeed. I'm not looking to oversee every detail, nor do I anticipate instant trust. I will ensure that this place operates as it was always meant to." A handful of exchanged glances, tentative yet attentive. "Initially, we are expanding our team. It's time to stop operating with minimal support while the rest of you exhaust yourselves. Compensation modifications are currently underway. If you have any genuine concerns, you can reach out to me directly. Decisions should no longer be dictated from an office by individuals who lack insight into the realities on the ground." Louis the chef folded his arms, and if the next manager turns out to be just like the previous one, Jared locked eyes with him, then they won't stick around for long. The employees took a moment to take that in. Though the relief didn't come all at once, Jared noticed the tension starting to dissipate. As the shift commenced, Jared didn't merely watch, he engaged actively. He accepted orders, delivered meals, and assisted in the kitchen during the busy lunch hour. He aimed for them to recognize that he wasn't merely a transient figure in the corporate world, delivering hollow assurances. By mid-afternoon, Tessa took him aside. "I wonder if you truly grasp the rarity of this," she remarked. "Owners typically don't engage in the actions you're taking." Jared carefully wiped his hands on a towel, the fabric absorbing the remnants of his task. "Perhaps they ought to," she sighed, crossing her arms. "I'm not suggesting that all issues are resolved instantly, but for the first time in quite a while, it genuinely feels as though someone truly cares. Just don't vanish when everything settles." Back into place, Jared nodded. "I will not." As the day drew to a close, the ambiance had undeniably transformed. Individuals were not merely following routines, they were beginning to embrace the possibility of change. As the final employees wrapped up their shifts, Jared cast one last glance around the restaurant. It still had room for improvement. There remained tasks ahead, and faith to restore. For the first time in ages, it seemed as though the place was finally heading in the right direction, and he was determined to maintain that momentum. Jared made his way back to the restaurant. The following morning, dressed in a relaxed manner, leaving the disguise behind. He wasn't ready to return to the corporate world just yet. There was still too much to accomplish here. Upon entering, he observed the morning team already engaged in their tasks, operating with a serene precision. The ambiance felt more buoyant than it had previously, yet it was evident that everyone was still navigating the abrupt shift. Tessa stood at the register, her attention fixed on the screen as she diligently entered an order. She looked up as Jared came closer, her face calm yet focused. "I didn't expect to see you here," she remarked, maintaining a steady tone. Jared nonchalantly shrugged his shoulders. She took a moment to reflect on my words before giving a slight nod, acknowledging that I had indeed promised not to vanish. That seems reasonable. The kitchen was beginning to heat up as Louis navigated his station, preparing the ingredients with care. Maria meticulously filled the napkin dispensers, all the while reviewing the seating chart in preparation for the impending rush. The atmosphere of the restaurant was gradually finding its groove, yet a distinct transformation was evident. Patrons were no longer merely steeling themselves for another arduous shift, but rather gearing up with purpose. Jared moved behind the counter, keenly watching the events as they transpired. He wasn't here to linger, but he needed to grasp what still required attention. The primary challenge at this moment was managing staffing in the absence of Kevin's limitations. They were finally in a position to bring on additional staff, but that endeavor would require some time. Until that time, the existing staff was still shouldering more than their fair share. As noon approached, the bustling lunch crowd arrived, and Jared eagerly stepped in to assist wherever necessary. He navigated through the stations, offering assistance wherever it was needed. This time, the employees accepted it without question. The initial surprise of having an owner working alongside them had transformed into a silent comprehension. As the flow of customers began to wane, Jared discreetly led Tessa to a quieter corner. He mentioned that we should discuss the hiring process. Who can she rely on to gather the right individuals? She pondered for a moment. Louis has been around, the longest. He understands who truly puts in the effort and who is merely in it for the paycheck. Jared nodded, acknowledging that this makes him a key player in the hiring process. Tessa folded her arms across her chest. "What are your thoughts on management? Are you considering bringing in an outsider?" Jared had given this some thought beforehand, only if absolutely necessary. "I prefer to elevate talent from within if there's someone prepared for the opportunity." She paused for a moment, yet he could sense the thoughts churning within her mind. "Let's observe how everything unfolds," she finally remarked. The remainder of the shift went by smoothly, yet as the dinner crowd began to arrive, Jared observed that Maria appeared somewhat unsettled. She navigated her tasks with precision, yet there was a tension in her movements, as if she anticipated an impending misstep. Jared reached her by the drink station. "Everything is fine," she paused before responding, simply biding her time to see if this transformation endures. Having spent considerable time in this place, It became clear to Jared that promises often fade away. It was easy to claim that improvements were on the horizon, yet demonstrating that change over time was a different challenge altogether. "I understand," he remarked, "and I'm not expecting you to trust me just yet. Continue with your current approach, and if anything seems off, please let me know." Maria observed him intently for a moment before giving a nod of understanding. Understood. As the evening rush calmed, Jared stepped back, observing how the team operated seamlessly without his input. Despite being stretched thin, a clear transformation was evident in their collaborative efforts. Rather than merely enduring the transition, they engaged in proactive problem-solving, adapting, and providing mutual support. It wasn't flawless just yet, but it was a step forward. As the night crew began their cleanup, Jared was already aware of what needed to happen next. Bringing on new talent was the immediate focus, yet for the future, the establishment required a fundamental transformation. Enhanced training, improved communication and leadership that genuinely backed its staff. As he secured the premises for the evening, he reminded himself to come back the following day. This was about transforming an entire dining experience. This focused on ensuring that none of his establishments would ever experience this type of dysfunction again. It was clear that this would require more than a single visit.